Yeah.
Okay.
Brian.
Yeah.
Good morning. So welcome, everybody. We're back in Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are continuing our work on H484. We're expecting to vote it out later today with the recommendations to the Appropriations Committee. This is a challenge, but we're working on it. And we have delegated the anything that touched on education to the Senate Education Committee. And we have done the same with the healthcare workforce. We've delegated that to Senate Health and Welfare. We're getting reports from Senator Campion, who's about to give us testimony about the education sections, and we will hear from Senator Lyons later this morning. So we welcome Senator Campion to our committee. It's good to have you.
Great to be here.
And we are going to, if you'd be kind enough to give us your feedback and any thoughts of anything that we could trim would be helpful. And if not, we are wanting to hear your testimony on what your committee thought.
Thank you, Senator Clarkson. For the record, Brian Campion, Bennington County District. We did not find anything to trim. We feel as though, what's happening in our schools right now, we need teachers, as everybody knows.
Yep.
It's a huge shortage. We certainly think these are great efforts. They build on some of the efforts that Senate Ed did last year with Grow Your Own, which ended up the agency sort of took on and invested some money in, and seems to be looking to Colin Robinson, seems to be working. But this is such a crisis, getting teachers to teach in Vermont. And so these are important steps, and the committee endorses them. I think the only outstanding question that we had, and Mr. Robinson from the NEA may have heard back on this, is how this was basically modeled. A lot of this was modeled after the nursing program. And we just wanted to get a sense of how's that going? How is that and how is that gone? Is that having some luck? Is this a good model going forward? So other than that,
to anchor, that is section, just so that we can anchor ourselves, that is what when we're talking about modeling it, that's the growing our own, looking at the staff that's at the school at the moment and upskilling.
No, that's actually the part where it's the loan forgiveness program.
Section 1.
Section 1.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, and Mr. Robinson can confirm these numbers or correct them. One of the conversations that came up in committee was, well, should we take a look at people's financials before we do loan forgiveness? And the committee's decision was, if you're about to enter into a job that's going to be $32,000, number one, we don't care who you are. We need you to teach. We don't care if you're a billionaire or, we need you to teach. So we're willing to take this step. Secondly, if you're about to enter this, if this is your career path, it generally isn't a wealthy position. And so we felt as though, let's move in this direction, forgive loans as much as we possibly can, and get people into the classroom.
And if they have loans, they've clearly had financial need.
Well, thank you. Yes, that's the one part that I had forgotten. Yes, that was the part that made it. Thank you. And that was yours.
So good. So you're recommending we fully support section 1 and fully support the funding of $2.5 million. Okay, great.
And then additionally, the $500,000, which is in there, to continue to support or really get going a state program on Grow Your Own. As we mentioned, the Agency of Education had taken some of this work on last year when we had a dispute with the House on it, and the Agency of Education set aside some of their own federal funds and got the program going.
So just to help us anchor here, that's the emerging pathways.
That's the emerging pathways.
That's the 500,000 in emerging pathways. That is, as I understand it, taking enabling people who may work in a more modest capacity, aren't fully vetted teachers.
That's right.
But who actually, having worked in the education system, are excited enough that they want to continue and grow their skills.
That's right. They've almost self-identified. They're paraeducators. They might be an admin assistant. They have a bachelor's degree. They're working in schools for a reason, possibly, And this is an opportunity to get them into the classroom if they're interested in taking that step.
And did you hear how many people it had helped and what had happened? I mean, they set up this program. Did they have takers?
100.
We currently have 100 folks.
100.
That's great. Okay, good. So it's up, running, and this is not creating a new program. This is, it says program creation, but actually it's not a,
Actually, I think it is, there might be some,
it's growing, it's evolving though from something we invested in last year, I understand.
we invested, the agency invested, would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, for the record, Colin Robinson, Vermont NEA. What this, last year, the agency set up a RFP process, modeled off of language that the Senate had passed. That
Right.
As Senator Campion said, didn't make it through the legislature, but the secretary took that language, built out an RFP process. Vermont NEA, at the request of 7 different curriculum directors in the Northeast Kingdom, had already put together something called Grow VTN, which was to support folks who wanted to pursue licensure through what's a process called the peer review process, which
Right.
is set up with the Agency of Education. So we applied to the agency, our proposal was selected. This would set up a similar process that could allow a consortium of school districts to come together and create their own program supporting folks through alternative pathways to licensure. Another entity like the Upper Valley Teacher Training
Yeah,
Program.
exactly.
Right? So it's not necessarily specific to the program we at Vermont NEA have set up, and quite frankly, we stepped into a space willingly and happily, but we got a lot of other stuff going on and are happy
Oh, really?
to have other entities and districts and nonprofits step into the space to, it's a complex problem, and the more people doing this good work, the
Great.
more impactful.
So that is the 500,000 that's on. Okay, great.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So will your program continue?
Yes, so Grow VTN, by quick overview, as I said, our director of professional programs, Dr. Julie Longchamp, she's a 30-year educator. She has worked with folks going through the peer review process, peer review licensure process, which basically is a process whereby if somebody already has a bachelor's degree, say they're in their 40s and want to take a career change, or somebody who's a paraeducator and wants to become a fully licensed educator, they don't have to go back to school. They can go through this process. So she supported folks through the process for many, many years. It was formalized last year, and as Senator Campion said, there are currently 100 folks participating in the program, and that's going to continue through this next whole year as well. That's what our grant from the Agency of Education this year is supporting. And that funding actually is primarily going to cover books, book costs, and some licensing fees for folks this year.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Terrific. So I'm glad 100 people have already
That's huge.
participated. That's great. Now we have only 900,000.
Yeah.
900 more to do.
Exactly.
So the next piece is going to go to finance, obviously, the teacher licensing fee
Yeah.
suspension.
We endorse that. We absolutely, I mean, again, these are not 12 people.
Right.
We want them, this is an appealing thing.
So this is for 5 years, license suspension for people who apply or for all teachers. I think it can't be for all teachers because it's only
I believe
$105
it- Yeah,
$1,000 a year.
yeah,
So
I
it
think
can't.
it's those that apply for it, and I'm looking to Mr. Robinson, dial a
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah, so it's specific to the teachers have an initial license that when they become a teacher, they have to go through, and then they have to renew that license every 5 years. This isn't about those fees, the initial license or the renewal. This is specific to the peer review licensing fee. The difference is the annual or initial licensing fee is $300 or so dollars, $350. This is a $1,200 fee. And this is for somebody who is trying to get into the classroom, trying to change careers. It's that specific process, kind of upskilling to use your.
So this builds on the emerging pathways
Correct.
and enables them to do this at lowers the bar and reduces some of the financial impediments that might be in their way.
Yeah, again, I think all three of these areas are hitting in some ways also on different groups, students that are just recently graduating, coming here. The $1,200 could also be, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're, a 50-year-old and you want to enter teaching and go through this portfolio system, this is also going to get rid of the fee for you. So it really does work to get a range of people in the classroom.
Or if you're a paraeducator making $20,000 a year,
Yeah.
$1,200
Right.
is a big lift.
For a legislator making.
Oh, for anybody, it's a big lift. $1,200.
There's a shortage.
$1,200.
If any of you are interested in going through this peer review process, I'm sure we'd be happy to support you.
Listen, we've all been educated on almost everything, so we're actively being educated every day, which is part of what the attraction to this job.
Right.
So those are the
Yeah.
3 sections, right? Do we have
Right.
one more section? I don't think so. We do, we have one more
Ask
section.
a question if I may. Just
Yes,
how
Randy,
do-
sorry.
How do existing teachers feel about the fee waiver for the new people?
So we did not have, we had this yesterday. We didn't take testimony from them. I'm happy to loop back. We have the NEA here. And
Well, that almost was
Yeah.
what I was asking. What are your members thinking? Have you got any feedback at all, pro or con?
Yeah, so as I think you can all appreciate, teachers are caring, compassionate individuals who are looking for the betterment of their students. And to that end, they also recognize that, as has been said, there are over 1,000 vacancies in our schools right now. We have a critical need for educators. And so they're strong supporters of making sure that we're able to support getting educators, highly qualified, trained educators into the classroom. I will say, we initially, when the conversation began on this in the House side, there was some talk and hope that maybe we would eliminate all licensing fees for teachers. Obviously, that is not what's before you today, and I think it's probably a bigger conversation because it involves more money than the $100,000 or so here. But this is something that we've heard no members speak against, and more members speak to the desire to get highly qualified
And
colleagues in the classroom.
Randy, I think this is not for all teachers, as you said, this is just for people who are doing peer-to-peer.
Correct.
here we go.
Yeah. But there isn't a sense of like, oh, they're getting something that I'm not.
That's.
Yeah, so that's a subset of teachers. And because the initial licensing fee for a teacher is what now, 300, did you say?
350,
So this is a $1,200. This is a much more significant fee.
correct.
Okay, that helps me. Wendy?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And just to follow up, something that we might want to look at in the future, or something I would be willing to talk about in the future is the licensing process, because what I've understood from teachers, my daughter's a teacher, she's now not in Vermont, but that can be a real barrier. So if we can improve the process.
Yeah, we've had some conversations in committee about that, but I think people generally would agree if we can. And I think the state has taken some direction, and correct me if I'm wrong, to streamline, to get this, even the portfolio process is a lot better and I think a lot easier than some of the processes out there in other states to get certified.
Okay, good.
So our fourth section
Diversity.
is I had totally forgotten, is the professional development contract. So if you just.
Educator workforce diversity, is that what?
Yes, yep,
Section 3.
it's section 4.
5.
Or 5.
5.
That's what I-
4 or 5. Yep.
I have
Thank you. Section 5.
section F6, educator workforce diversity.
Yeah, that's from the budget.
Okay, great, yeah, okay. So what we're trying to do here is broaden the, who's in the classroom. We want to, again, give opportunities to underrepresented Vermonters who want to be in the classroom, work to get them into the classroom. We know that our state's diversifying. We want to make sure that students can recognize those, themselves at the head of the classroom. And basically what this is doing, as I recall, this is creating an education affinity group grant that would actually be able to bring different groups of people together and provide grants to support them in their professional development, in bringing new educators so that they feel supported. They're in the classroom. Can they converse? Can they have conversations with others from underrepresented groups and really build up that group of people in the classroom?
So it's.
Am I getting that close to right?
Yes.
Thank
no,
you.
Would you like to add something?
I would just say, I think the testimony that the House Education Committee received on this, I think there's some specific intention with this on retention, specifically educators of color, and creating opportunities for them to connect, and so we can have a not only high quality education workforce, but also one that is reflective of our students.
So may I just ask, do you know, I mean, you may not have this with you, but what % of our teachers are people of color?
I don't have a specific number, but to the best of my knowledge, it is generally reflective.
Pretty modest.
Yeah.
And I hate to ask the obvious, but this is a very modest ask. Of all the asks we have, I think this is our most modest ask of $30,000. And I hate to ask the question, but what can we accomplish for $30,000?
I mean, is there a reporting back on this section? So that was
Yeah.
one of the things that we were hoping to gauge.
Yes. So
And again,
that's
that wasn't our idea, but maybe we build it up going forward.
So that's
Whose idea? Where did this come from?
This came from I believe House Education. Again, we were,
And like I say, I'm less than enthusiastic about it, to say the least. This concept of creating diversity by creating segregated groups, I've never thought to be a very good idea. As I say, I don't like this at all. Probably will lump it.
yeah.
but I don't like it.
So again, we
I
spent,
don't think it's helpful.
in terms,
It's just the opposite.
I appreciate hearing that. All I can say is, given the time that we had to work on this and the testimony, and frankly, I know there are a lot of moving parts, things are coming together quickly. We had, spent about an hour and a half on all of this yesterday, as well as some other budget requests from appropriations to review. We generally felt, based on what we heard from the NEA, who's our main witness, which we're grateful for, and who's also followed this work all the way through the process, felt comfortable advancing this and getting a report back and seeing what are we doing, what can be done going forward. And maybe this is a conversation for another day. And I'm happy
We have
to.
a tendency to become very political and politicized. And sometimes diversity is good, but diversity also is the root of divisiveness. And one of the things that we want to be within our workforce is we want to be welcoming, and we want to be inclusive, and we want to be broad, and we want to welcome people into existing groups to become part of it as part of the fabric. And what I often see is when we create, quote, affinity groups, we create a bunch of segregated sections that are concerned only with issues of race or otherwise, as opposed to the broader issues. And actually it has the exact opposite effect of what we want to have happen. So I'm concerned when I see this.
No, I appreciate that. The only thing I sort of thought of it similar to when we did a principal mentoring bill years ago, where again, you have a lot of just new people arriving in a position and an opportunity to have conversations, see about their experiences, all these kinds of things, support one another, and so we were not uncomfortable with it. We thought it seemed like a noble first step.
Well, and I hear your concern. I think the report back in January will be helpful for us to understand how if it's being effective. If it helps retain some teachers, I would feel that was great.
It would be
It's a very
huge.
modest amount of money, but I
It is
think
a very
that
modest,
it's the kind
of
of,
course, you say, well,
yeah, no, it adds up, but I think that's part of what our job is, which is why we have section 11 breakdown. We have to follow up more perhaps a little more fully than we have on every one of these. So I would say, thank you for this. I think with the report back, it's up to us to, in January, look at this, see how effective it's been. And not that in 9 months or 8 months, but we'll have, it has already started. So we'll have a notion of how effective it has been.
And frankly, to your point, Senator, if it helps us keep a few teachers right now,
I think
I
that's
mean, we
important.
cannot, lose anyone. at
I
this
think the
point.
retention piece is the piece I'm most enthusiastic about in
Ideally,
in
you would
this.
take everything in this bill and put it in a big spreadsheet and force rank it to most important to least important in terms of effectiveness. And that's how you draw the line.
Yeah, well, that is a way we could do it, certainly do it in the future. And certainly we're asking increasingly for those kind of measurables for us to be able to evaluate these programs. So, and hopefully once we have some set of eyes that's actually coordinating all this, we can actually have that kind of work done. So I'm quite optimistic, but I thank you for this.
Yeah, and again, this is, we thank all of you. It's a first step. We hope to do more for teachers. We need teachers here. We want to make, and we talk about this in committee, we want Vermont to be the state where people come and want to teach and be here forever.
Right.
All sorts of opportunities in our schools and outside of our schools.
Right. So I guess while we have, we have 6 more minutes and both of you experts here with us on teacher. In addition to these, I know we're doing other things to retain teachers and grow them. I mean, and keep them. What else are we doing at the moment that isn't in this bill, but just quickly, what else are we doing to help teachers stay? And because I know we're doing some other things, we used ARPA money in lots of ways to retain and to pay for some additional. I mean, we spent a lot of money in this cohort. So I just, if you could just quickly remind us, because this is only four
Can I just say
things.
one thing?
Yeah, no, please.
The one thing I would say that we, as teachers, I can't emphasize enough, and I know Mr. Robinson also understands this is a hard job, and it is getting increasingly more difficult.
Yes.
And when I talk to local teachers, my understanding more and more is we need to address the students so that they can go in and do their job, teach and learn, which means addressing issues like trauma, making sure that mental health supports are there. And yes, through ARPA, some of those things happened, and that helps our teachers. For example, I would say a lot of school districts use ARPA funds to build out parent engagement programs, added counselors. All those things are great, and they do help with retention because you're arriving and the supports are there, and you don't need to be the mental health professional. You don't always need to be the one to call and say, where's Sarah, or, but those we know are disappearing. And that has so many districts across the state deeply worried. And if I think we could continue to work on the mental health supports for young people and their families so that teachers can do the job that they were trained to do, to teach, that in itself is a huge economic development in student retention.
Actually, and that we are addressing further in the increased amount to our designated
Right.
agencies who are partners with us in
Right, yeah,
education. And it also, we have the mental health, that further in the bill, we have the psychiatric mental health teaching group. We have money further in this workforce development bill. We have 3 million, no, it's not 3 million. It is, it is 3 million for the designated agencies and SSA training.
Yeah.
So that is a big piece of what we're talking about.
But those ARPA funds, the disappearance of those are still going to have a massive impact on our schools.
Oh,
Massive.
agreed.
Yeah.
So thank you both. This
Yeah.
was
I
very
mean, did you
helpful.
want to add any, in
No,
terms of-
The only 2 things I would add, one is that the teacher workforce shortage predated the pandemic.
Oh, yes.
We had a declining number of people pursuing, entering colleges of education. We also historically, about 50% of the folks who enter the profession leave in the first 5 years, I think for a lot of the reasons that Senator Campion spoke to. So I think we started at a deficit before the pandemic began for all the obvious reasons. So that is the context in which this conversation is happening. The final thing I'll just mention is a school support staff really often are, I don't want to say forgotten about, but aren't recognized for the critical role that they play supporting students' ability to access their learning. They're not the ones necessarily delivering the instruction, but they're creating the space for those students to access their learning. And so when Senator Campion was talking about the issues of trauma and other impacts on students right now, it's really those support staff that help teachers to create a learning environment where all students can learn whatever their opportunities might be. And that's one area where I think we as a state and local districts are gonna have had a lot of trouble over the past couple of years retaining paraeducators.
Was my next question, which is, what is the retention level of paraeducators? I think it's pretty low.
It is low, because quite frankly, you can have, you can find competitive wages in sectors of our economy right now where you're not having to deal with all the complex traumas that these students who usually have one-on-ones or other needs might be dealing with. So,
Yeah,
The other thing I
that's
just-
something we need to
Yeah.
continue.
I would just add that we did have an early conversation about, but it's a longer conversation that we would all need to have, is that do we set a minimum base salary for teachers? I mean, $32,000 a year to arrive here as a starting teacher. It's unconscionable
It isn't conscious.
for everything that we ask.
And-
I mean, and people, so,
Yeah, that is something we need to address.
yeah.
But
you
not
do
at this
that, and your mental health workers make an immediate $2,000 to $5,000 increase in pay if they join the educational system. So we've
Oh,
got,
yeah,
a mental health worker, if they get hired by the school, gets an immediate, so we can't keep the mental health
Well,
workers that the teachers need to support them. I mean, the violence in the classroom was the biggest takeaway I got from being on finance, on
Yeah.
education. I just wanted to go home and hug my grandkids.
yeah.
I mean, that was the eye opener.
Yeah.
And that wasn't there when my kids went to school.
And it's not, of course, only impacting those kids, but kids that witness it.
Oh, yeah.
And how it impacts them.
I mean, it's
And children.
It
it's
impacts
not just
everybody.
shooters that make school unsafe these days.
So thank you
Yeah,
both.
thanks.
Yes, huge challenges to address.
Yeah.
And it's only 9:30.
Yeah, hey, this was a highlight
Thank
of my
you.
day so far.
Thank you.
It's
Seriously, really.
all that you've done so far.
Thank you
Thanks,
both.
everybody.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
Okay, terrific. We are going to, David Hall is going to be here, I hope.
Here, is it popping up?
And Senator Lyons, what do we have an update on when Senator Lyons is joining?
Come down.
Is she, Joan, do you mind if we, if she can Ginny come right now? I think that if we could finish hearing from the groups, from the committees we've delegated, and we couldn't hear from Ginny at 8:30. So we've had to, on the healthcare workers. So do you mind coming back at 10?
Give me time.
10.
10?
Is that okay?
Yeah, I have to make calls. anyway.
I apologize.
No worries.
Well, yeah, anyway,
I'll be
thanks.
there.
If Ginny can come, that would be great. Okay, perfect. And we just lost Randy.
Oh,
Oh, well,
he'll probably come right back.
okay. So, yeah.
Well, I can fill space. Is somebody working on, are we going to talk about all those school issues and pay?
Not right now.
Right, I know right now, not right now.
I-
At some point we will.
Absolutely. And as it interfaces with workforce, I think
Yes.
we would probably want to consider doing something joint with Senate Ed.
That'd be great. Okay, thank you.
And how that sugars out. Welcome, Senator Lyons, come join us.
Oh, look at this nice chair.
Evidently
Thanks,
it's
Helen.
new.
It's been warmed up for you
That's what I
by
hear.
Senator.
Senator
Campion.
Campion. want it up front.
It's designed to soothe our witnesses into compliance.
No, I'm petrified.
It is, so welcome, Senator Lyons. We have asked your committee, you and your committee, to review the healthcare workforce pieces in this bill.
Yeah.
And we just to focus our committee on those pieces. They are in sections
I was
20,
12, I have the,
yeah, you have
I
section,
have the section by section that David Hall brought to our committee. And so I looked at on that document, and then I went to the bill, but section F12, F14,
Right.
F15, and F16.
right, and in our bill, in the main bill, it's sections 25, sections 25
Okay.
and 26.
Okay,
And 28. It takes us through the designated agencies.
right.
So it
Okay,
begins with
okay.
Vermont Nursing Forgivable Loan Incentive Program. And that's a big piece of it. And then there's the healthcare workforce position at AHS. And then there is the Agency of Human Services designated and specialized service agencies.
Yes,
So those are the sections we asked you to take a peek at.
we did. And then what I did was, I don't have the fiscal note for this bill, but I did look at the fiscal note for Act 183, which was last year,
Yeah.
to do kind of a comparative
Yeah,
analysis.
we have that also. Yeah,
What's being continued and what's not.
thank you. That is
being
exactly,
modified.
yeah.
And so I do have some comments, and I won't take a lot of your time.
No, you have time.
Um,
If you would just give us a input from what your committee felt.
Yeah, and
We
so my
needed to do.
committee looked at it really briefly, and I've spent more time on it, so I will hope that the committee will agree with what I'm saying here. So we just went through it. I think everyone was fine with what was in the bill. I did dive down a little bit deeper. But we did hear testimony from the DAs, from Vermont Care Partners,
Yeah.
DAs, SSAs, that piece. I have received communications from AHEC, the Area Health Education Centers, regarding some of the work that they were proposed to do from last year. And then we went through the other sections on the Vermont State Colleges and other scholarships. So I think committee will be, that's in F12. So I'll start with that.
So just give us the name of the program because
Vermont
we're,
State College, the Critical Occupations Scholarship.
okay.
Yeah,
That
So-
includes nurses.
so
And-
that last year was more related to, we expanded it to mental health.
Just to ground everybody, it's section 16 in the actual bill.
Sorry.
And it includes nurses. It's a slightly different
It
definition. than
includes
we have.
early childhood,
Yeah,
criminal justice, mental health counseling, master's level, clinical mental health
Yeah.
counseling, master's level.
Yeah.
So the expansion was, and that includes $3.8 million.
it's one of the bigger asks.
And I will just say that it's a significant and important piece of work that's in here. So I think it's very much supported by the committee. We worked hard on this last session. And then the addition of early childhood and we didn't talk about criminal justice, and we didn't talk specifically about the expansion, but if these nursing, dental hygienists,
Yeah.
early childhood, and criminal justice can all be supported adequately through the Vermont State Colleges, I think it's a really important to continue. I think we just started some of these programs. for
Right, because they were
tuition,
new. Some of them were new last
and
year.
they're
It's taken
brand
a
new,
while
and
to boot up.
so keeping them going with, as long as funds are available, keeping them going and making sure that the cohort of students who begins is able to be covered for the length of their education. Otherwise, we drop people off the cliff. And so that, and I think the state colleges have done really an excellent job. You can hear their testimony on that.
Yeah. So you support
Yeah.
section 16 and the 3.8 million in, as continuance
Yes.
of those programs.
Yeah. And I know that the dental hygienists, for example, are gonna provide increased access, as will nurses, and hopefully all of the others. These are critical needs.
And these are for full scholarships for families for household incomes of under $75,000,
And so-
just to remind our committee. It's for
That's a
lower-
question I have, actually. It's something your committee will have to look at, but the threshold of 75,000, I think, is new in this language. I don't think, I'm trying
It's
to
not-
remember, because I didn't see it in the fiscal note.
It-
Did we have that in last time?
I
don't think we have.
can't remember. We can ask David Hallwin.
And I don't know whether that puts any kind of a increased burden on the administration of the program, how that goes.
There-
I think
There's an or.
I think that's maybe part of BSAC's grants.
I think
They
so too. They
have-
talked about this.
Okay.
Yeah, they
No.
have I think 75 when they're doing their grants. And then there was discussion at the board meeting. There is a higher limit for families that have more than one child in college at the same time.
So that makes this sort of compatible with the 802 scholarships, which
I
are,
think, I checked them, but I think
Yeah.
that's a
Okay.
pretty standard
yeah.
number.
And
Okay.
so there is also an or, so there is some flexibility in that.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so
That was
now,
just a question I had, and you all have the answers.
well, we don't necessarily, but I think there is an or that says or less enrolled education programs that lead to a career in an occupation with a critical need.
And we are looking at some of these things in appropriations. As you've got the reference.
Yeah.
here.
So then let's switch, so thank you,
So-
that's section 16, that's the critical care occupations.
So
Let's switch
F14,
to
Vermont Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Forgivable Loan Incentive Program.
That is section 23 on page, whatever it is. Hold on, bear with us. That's on page 22 of the bill.
So I'm
This is for $1
not,
million.
and it's well worth the investment. My question here is with regard to the administration of this, it's through
Through
the
VSAC.
Department of Health.
It says here, it's.
You have the language, I don't have the, I can find that.
It, on the
It-
spreadsheet, does it say BSAC?
It says in the bill that it's going
Yeah,
to
right there it
VSAC.
says it goes to
On
BSAC.
the
I'm pretty sure it goes to
Okay,
VSAC
then
to
if it goes to
administer.
BSAC, that's probably been sorted out. Last year,
Yeah.
what we tried to do last year was to sort out where VSAC's expertise would be important, and then where the AHEC area Health Education Center's expertise on loan repayment would be more beneficial. So, and I don't see that, I don't see AHEC referenced, and I know that some of the money that was coming from was going through Department of Health to AHEC. And I'm not sure which section that is in, so I'll talk about that in just a minute. But I do think it might be related, for example, to the nurse faculty loan repayment, which is a new program in last year's. And then the Vermont Healthcare loan repayment, which was also last year. And I think this may be a last year question rather than this year. But the question about how Department of Health is releasing funds to AHEC has become problematic from AHEC's perspective. That's something that we will probably look at in appropriations and that you may want to.
Right, which may be why this is going through VSAC.
Well, I'm not sure it should go to VSAC. I'm just saying that the expertise for loan repayment, because I've been on the AHEC board previously, and I'm very familiar with the work that they do.
Right, well, they
Since
both have,
1997,
right,
and that they deal directly with Allied Health and other loan.
So all I can tell you here is that it is big, and of course, VSAC has a
Well,
lot of
that one's,
experience with
this one,
forgivable
I
loans.
don't know, I can't answer your question.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent in this case, but I think hearing from AHEC may help to clarify.
And,
Or if you
yeah,
can, and if you
yeah,
can't,
and,
we'll do it.
no,
Yeah,
it's just,
it's okay.
we, this was also vetted by Healthcare Committee.
Right,
Came to us recommended from them, and they did the testimony on this initially, so
yeah,
we're,
so we'll, yeah, no.
and
it's
you
just
can
a
explore that
question.
further
I just
maybe
want to find out from AHEC.
Okay.
I do have a memo.
so the
from
AHEC
them.
question is the question mark.
I have a memo from them that we can.
So the other,
Okay, so that one, I think that one is fine.
and the EMS training, is through the Department of Health also.
Yeah.
I mean, or it's actually through the Department of Health.
Yes.
Will Moran, oversees that piece, and, that is section 24.
We're good with that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's been a
That's
major
important.
need for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And the nurse.
And
mental health
follows up
nurse,
Wendy on last year's
Practitioner, advanced practice nurse is critically important. So that 1 million is well spent.
Okay, that is another big piece. It's 3 million in global commitment, and so I am not, I'm always unclear how where the global commitment money
If we can-
interplays with our one-time money that our little box that we've been given.
Well, global commitment is Medicaid.
That's Medicaid.
Yeah, so it's,
But if
so
we
I,
can do it,
I don't think it's in here, is I guess my point.
what, yeah, it is, it's in the hospital, it's in,
It is in the base, so it's not in our box that we have to cut, is what I'm trying to
Right.
say.
right,
Okay,
but the EMS piece, I think.
the EMS
Is
piece
in
is very
our-
much so, as are the psychiatric mental health. So both of those are in for $1 million, and you're supportive of both of
And
those.
is the EMS training going well?
Yes, we heard from Will Moran earlier. It is going well, and it is a huge need because most of these are
Oh, yeah.
volunteers, and this has helped enormously.
Right.
Make with consistent education for EMS and health pay, which has been a barrier for.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, because there's, we've upped the standards, but these are volunteers
Some of them,
and
yeah.
they have other jobs, and we were asking them to give up a weekend and drive for many of them
Right.
a long way to take these classes.
Right.
So we've tried
To make it
to
more,
make it
sweeten the
accessible.
opportunity.
And we have a new training center in Townsend. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
you do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which I
Well,
believe is part of this.
Drew
program.
yes,
Hazelton,
it's trying to,
without Drew Hazelton, this wouldn't be here. So Drew has been an incredible advocate for EMS.
Yeah,
So the,
Okay,
nursing forgivable
So we're now in
loan
section
program.
25, which
Okay,
is
I'm
the,
just looking at the nursing forgivable loan program, which has the match with global commitment and
yeah,
general fund for $3 million, if we can do that. That would-
yeah, that's got 3 parts to it,
Yeah.
which is in our bill, and that adds up to.
Okay.
Okay, so you are yes on this.
Yes, and then the coordinator position that was established last year for AHS on workforce coordination. And I think it's important to look at the language that began that, I think you have it on last year's fiscal note, what that coordinator is doing. So,
Right.
yeah, it's not, here it is.
It's not in our bill, but it
The
is
coordinator
from
will
last year.
focus on building educational, clinical, and housing partnerships and support structures to increase and improve healthcare workforce training, recruitment, and retention. So it isn't a person who's going out and appropriating or allocating funds, but it is an individual who is going out and building relationships. And I think that is, I don't know how much involved that person was when the University of Vermont has established housing in South Burlington for some of their folks. But if that's the kind of thing that I see, this person doing, and so really critical, and then identifying where the needs are. So it's a 3-year position, and this is the second of the third, this will be the second of the third year, for 170,000. That one, I think, is important.
Okay, the one for 170. Okay.
Okay, and you're supportive of this?
Yeah, I am. It's one-time funds for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's not ongoing base fund.
And something, it builds on what we invested in last year.
Right, and you can't tell, I mean, 1 year of something doesn't really give you success. AHS has been very supportive of this.
So that's section 26 in our.
That's section 26, and it builds on what we invested in last year. Right.
So then we moved I'm gonna jump down to the dental hygienist forgivable loan program.
Before you do the,
And I'm gonna
the big
go
one.
back, right, so that one, that seems like a pretty minimal amount of money. And then they're also, dental hygienists are also included in these, BS Mont State College program in the earlier section.
so, sorry.
Yep, and
Forgivable
that's in the base, right?
Yeah.
So.
The
so-
debt,
so
those
we're
are
good
all
on
not
that.
in the thing we're working on at the moment. But we, and the major, yeah,
But then if we go to the Agency of Human Services and the designated agencies and the
special, yeah.
special services folks, the program, that what we've heard is that the program has resulted in a 94% retention rate for workers. This is amazing, really, because there's been such high turnover in our designated agencies. And now at the previous time, it was like a 60% retention rate. The retention, and I'm just telling you what our
From Julie, is this
our
from Julie?
folks have told us as a result of the program. The changes that are being suggested would change the way the funds are administered. And currently, the funds are given to Vermont Care Partners, to the designated agencies, and then they distribute to the workers based on the workers' needs. The way this, I think, is written is that it changes that and sends it through the Agency of Human Services, perhaps through DOH.
To be
That's an
distributed.
issue to be considered, because you don't, we're in the first year of a program, and now we're gonna change the administration. I don't know what effect that will have. There is concern on the part of the agencies that it will change the effectiveness.
Is that something that you and Approach will address, because we don't have the,
Well, I think I will bring it up in Approach, absolutely. Yeah.
okay,
And then the other piece that they're concerned about, and I would have to hear from others on this, but not basing the distribution of the funds to the individual designated agencies base it on full-time equivalents in the agency. So, and I can understand why you'd want to look at the number of people hired in the agency to provide funding, but that hasn't been the case. The money has gone through, and then they've been able to determine who needs it the most, and that has resulted in a higher retention. I can think of reasons why someone who's part-time might benefit from this and then become full-time.
Right.
So I don't know where I think it's a metric that maybe a metric that is trying to be used to build equitable distribution of the funds, but it seems.
they have added that
Yeah.
equitably based on each agency's proportion of full-time equivalent.
Yeah,
And there may be, what you're saying is there may be some need for this with part-time people
Yes.
to keep them.
keep them and have them become full.
Right.
So I.
But you guys didn't take testimony on that at
No,
this
we
point.
didn't,
So
only from the Vermont Care Partners, only from the designated agencies themselves, and that's that's my
Yeah.
side of the story.
So, question for you, there's 3 million in the budget for this, at the moment, we have 4 million in the bill here, which they ended up, reducing to 3. Unless,
So what, the House added 1 million? of
No,
general fund, or
the House reduced it
Reduced
to
it to
3, and, unless there's another 1 million here, but maybe that they're including this, maybe including something more that I'm just not seeing.
What
But
was
anyway,
it the last time?
yeah, it was, in S11, you mean? The DAs,
1.25 million.
it was one,
So this one and doubles it.
it was, yeah, 1.25.
I think it's an investment well made.
Well, it ties into what Ann is, I mean, it
Yeah.
ties into the whole mental health piece with schools too, because this is where a lot of those people are, come to us from.
Yeah.
And the dental hygienist, you're okay with, I think that is
I think that's it.
those are your,
Yeah, my biggest concerns are kind of around the administration to make sure that it continues, the money continues to flow.
to flow
because
to the right
I've heard
people.
from the AHEC folks that the money hasn't flown.
That's not good.
Flown.
So,
That's my-
so,
Oh, there she is.
so this is an interesting question. I'm not sure we can resolve it in the few minutes we have, but is that something you would like to take up in
I
appropriation?
will bring it to appropriations. We'll
Okay.
just see where we get to.
Okay,
I think I talked with Senator Kitchell about it, and we can't. I hope that we can make those alters.
I don't think we are
No,
probably the right group, but we needed to know your input and that kind of oversight of the agencies, I think, we're gonna let approach wrestle with, yes? Because we
Yeah.
don't have time.
No,
We
no,
don't
no,
have
I
time
totally
to
understand.
do
Will,
that.
will we get some sort of report on what happened last year? Because last year
that's what we've
The
been
salary-
getting.
That's what they get.
That's what we've been
So-
getting, and we've heard nothing but good news.
okay,
So,
Except the only bad news, sort of the slowing down of things has been how the money is put out the door, some of the administrative pieces. But the
So-
other parts where the money has gone out the door.
it's been
and
effective.
It's been utilized in a fairly smooth and efficient way, and not using those, then that seemed good results, and that for the DAs as well as for the state colleges having their own appropriation, or UPM with their own appropriation. That's all worked pretty well.
So actually, from the spreadsheet we have, it has yet to have been spent.
There it is. That's
So
where
this
the
is a
flip-
problem across the board with S11. And one of the reasons you'll hear as we discuss our money piece is why I'm not in favor of spending new money in an area where they have yet to spend the money we wanted in a focused area.
But if we can
Oh, it's,
dam out of the way, then
they're being set up. It's just for, and I think this is what we have to dig into next is where
but
is this
that's
money?
the problem.
And maybe Sarah has further answers.
Okay, well, I just say I would explore the Department of Health and also the area health education centers. They are AHEC, which is, sits in the dean's office in the medical school, has high expertise in distributing, loan payment, repayment.
Yeah,
plans.
great. Thank you, Ginny.
Okay. well, I'll
This was
leave. I'll
terrific.
leave you all the problems.
You have happily reinforced the needs and been an
There.
articulate advocate for those sections of the budget. So,
The one thing though that you haven't done is tell us what to cut.
yeah. you
I know,
have-
I haven't, I know.
That's what we're waiting for.
Okay, so here's what I can tell you. So where you see a doubling of investment,
Mhm.
then look to see how many new professions are being benefited. So, and the 3.8
Mhm.
for the for the Vermont State Colleges, then you've also added in 3 or 4 new professions. That one would fit then, because you're adding.
That's the critical care.
That's a critical care.
Right.
Well, if, with the DAs, you're seeing a 94% success rate.
Mhm.
So
So would you repeat those numbers on the retention? Because that was,
94% success rate
So,
retention.
and
As
it was,
compared to-
it
I think it's about a 60%.
was at 65% retention, something like that, and it's gone up to over 90.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so the question is there continue to be capacity in the agencies for providing support for workers, new workers, incentives for people in place? That's a place you might think about that. And then on the, what was the last one?
The DAs,
That was it, the DAs,
Designated.
right, we have the 4 million, the 4
Yeah,
million.
the 3 million, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much. This is,
I don't see,
you don't see any,
I see that we still have critical needs. We're doing what we can with our compact bills to increase professional activity, nurses, but
They're very.
yes,
so sadly, the needs outweigh
they do.
they weigh down our pockets big
do.
time.
I don't know what the needs are in terms of the criminal justice system. That was added into the state colleges.
Right,
But I do know that the others
the
are.
desperate need for workforce.
Yeah.
All our police departments are in desperate need for that pipeline to be growing, and
Can't
it's
help you
been
there,
challenged.
Except you might be able to redistribute some of the funds. We did that last year during conference committee on Act 183 and then tried to sort out. We added in the mental health counselors, that's so critical, and
Yeah.
the advanced practice mental health nurses, they're so critical. I don't see a continuation of investment in the nurse educators. And maybe that's because the money hasn't been fully appropriated.
It has, I don't think it has yet,
But we don't have a lot of those anyways.
right. But we brought up their salaries last year, which was
Right.
critically important, so
That's fine.
that's.
That was also an impediment to getting nurses trained,
Right.
that we didn't have them. And the question is, as we talk about nurse training here,
Yeah,
Right, but we spent quite a bit last year
yeah.
doing that, and I think hopefully those teachers are still in place, and it has not been a need articulated.
hopefully we've not heard one way or the other.
That's a good question to ask of, what were the schools that were involved?
Mostly the
Castleton,
Vermont State colleges.
UVM, was it just,
That-
UVM also had its own little,
Well, it has that when they go and do their training at the hospital,
yeah.
the
The preceptor.
Preceptors.
Yeah,
but this money that Randy's talking about was the money that we actually need. It boosted salaries to keep nursing educators, which we did, and I'm
Because you paid more money as a nurse than you did being an
yes.
educator.
that's
So
right.
thank you.
Thank
And we're
you.
going to chat with Sarah because Joan Goldstein and David Hall, I believe, are,
He said maybe 5 minutes.
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ginny, thank you very much.
Good work.
So, thank you. Well, we're just, yeah. Sarah, would you be kind enough to join us? Joan Goldstein. Great. Would you be kind of just to let Joan know if possible that will be another few minutes, and Sarah, thanks. Yeah, we didn't know when you were coming, and so
I knew I needed to be here as fast as possible, and then I headed here as soon as
Different
I.
than the one we had last.
It is. It's a little bit
and
different.
sadly,
Oh, no.
so it may confuse us.
That's not hard.
Do you have one for
Did you
Scott?
get my email? I think Scott's gonna make me a few extras. Thank you.
Okay,
I gave away
because,
my extras.
so, because we were, some of us, we were asked to do homework. Some of us have done that homework on what we were given.
Yeah.
And we've been cutting and appreciating and sadly having to cut things we appreciate from what we had. So
Yeah.
if you'd be kind of just to update us on
Sure.
what is different in this.
Yes, I can do that gladly. And I think the big
Ooh, you have a big ad in New Americans here.
Well, it's not it's actually a restoration of a program that was appropriated last year. So let's talk about
That's
the.
$1 million.
But the total is
So,
much reduced.
Joan,
Yeah, the-
we did not know when Sarah
Yeah.
was going to be, no, I'm so apologetic.
I'm flexible if you, I'm totally flexible. So whatever works for the, I just popped over to say, Joan, if you want to keep the extra.
Okay, so let's figure this out because I don't want to settle into working with Sarah if Joan's on a timeline. David,
I'm good.
are you okay? Because Sarah is updating us on our box that we have to cut from.
Well, maybe we don't need to cut as much. Look
Yeah,
at-
I know, so
look-
that's
look at
what
the
Sarah's
bottom.
gonna go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's maybe drop to the bottom of this updated sheet. And you'll see now that your target is still the $40 million, right? And
Yes.
the amount you need to reduce to get to 40 is this yellow box, $42,207,000.
So what did you take away?
So what changed? So if you
I mean,
go,
that's good
And
news.
who took it away?
so I think as
Cutting
Senate
2 million is a lot easier than cutting 10.
It is, and so as Senate Appropriations has continued markup of their bill this week, they've taken like a slightly different approach than when we originally sat down last week. And so a couple of things, and you'll see the blue notes on the House side. So if you go to row 12, the state colleges bridge funding, that's something that we have to fund the bridge funding, so it's off of your list as
Oh,
an
yeah.
item that you need to weigh in or
Oh,
not.
good.
So that's been removed.
Oh, wow.
Well, we agree with it. So I'm
Yeah,
sure
you
they'll
agree,
be
right,
happy
anyway,
to
but
hear
there,
that,
yes,
right?
yes, so
Yeah,
it's,
we had no choice about that.
correct, and so that's like, it's coming off of your list, it's funded in the budget, but you don't have to, not that you were gonna do anything
Right,
different
right,
than fund it, but,
So that's very good news.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so the next item that changed,
As were the brownfields. Those two
Yes,
items were
yes.
really gonna be tough.
right, the next thing that changed is on row 15. I added this restore the reversion from Act 183, Section 5A. If you went to your original sheet that I gave you last week and dropped down to the bottom, you saw where we noted it's row 47
Yes.
or
Oh, yeah, we were
44.
wondering.
We had
And
row
so
row
that-
44.
that is where the House, it's an existing program for regional workforce expansion that was
Yeah.
appropriated in Act 183 last year.
Yep.
That the House, in communicating with the Department of Labor, understood that they'd only spent a little bit of the funds, and so they were kind of temporarily reallocating those dollars. I think since the plan is to continue with the
Yes.
intent of the original appropriation, it needs to be restored, and so that's up on your list in a yellow box as a high priority to restore that.
Yeah,
So that's changed. The next item, actually, these notes, these were on your list anyway, so that's fine. I was just making some notes there, but
so
the
the
next.
rail trail, it has been taken, that was not in our,
Yes, Senate Appropriations has a plan for that, but
okay.
that doesn't need you to weigh
So-
in on it at this
Because
point.
our understanding that is all paid for actually in the,
Yeah,
okay.
there's another plan to
So,
cover that.
and
So I'll want to know more about that in the future, but I
Yeah.
will not ask
Yes,
now.
yes. The next this $18,000, that was okay to remove anyway. And so that's what the
Right.
note says there. The $117,000, they'd still like you to weigh in, but I do think that's a high priority for Senate Appropriations for the Vermont 250th Commission.
so
They
are
would
they
like that
asked,
in.
And
so
it's a high
there's no,
priority.
I'm thinking either we're gonna do it or we're not gonna do it, so.
when is it? When is the 250th?
Geez,
It's in a couple more
I think
years.
it's in a couple more years, which is one of the reasons why the House took it out, but we do, I'm sure there's a lot of planning that goes into that event. So I think that's why the Senate Appropriations Committee is thinking it's important to fund.
So is that an ask from them to put that into this base?
It's not,
Into this,
I mean, I think it is a high priority for them. So as you go through your list.
They might, if we don't put it in, they might do it for us.
And we're saying that's the appropriate.
Appropriations,
Okay.
yeah.
so if we add that, that's adding to our 42 million.
Right, if you want to fund it, you have to
before
add
we
that,
go-
so you have
Before
to.
we go any further, is there anything else that is here
The-
that is a priority for them that they have not communicated to us?
I want your committee to have the chance to go through these programs.
Well, we
yeah.
weren't really doing
Yeah.
too much that hadn't made it through the house.
So let me, there's one other thing that changed, which you're aware of. Originally, your list included the $5 million that was in the House construct to agriculture,
Yes.
for the Commission on the Future of Ag Economic Development. That has been taken out of your construct
Thank
because
goodness.
it's over in Senate Agriculture. And so that's
they
the
have their
other
own
big
box.
thing. They have their own box.
Does it include universal meals? Just say.
That's education fund. So,
That's
but
not an
yes,
appropriation, that's on the ed fund.
Yes. Well, it's sort of appropriation. Randy, we are reviewing these and the good news is we have less money to cut. Quite a bit.
Well,
I mean, it's a good, so the other priority.
Well,
for-
we have a new spreadsheet.
Yeah, the 117,
That's
is it reflected in that 40?
it's not because
It's
it
not.
wasn't in the House.
So, but we need to know
This
what
one.
else is
So-
Senate
so the
appropriate's gonna
42.
add if we don't put it in, because
So
I
the
had no
42
idea
rather
that that was a
than 48.
priority for
Correct,
this.
and we want to get it
So
down.
what I will say is that I think that they, as Senator Kitchell, I believe, communicated to you, Senator Clarkson, when there are new programs that were created,
She communicated
that
this.
that is challenging in this environment because there'll be a future obligation
We-
likely. And so use that lens of if it's a new program,
We have appreciated that comment.
Yeah.
We have taken it on board and in the recommendations I'm gonna make to our committee, that is very much what we are going to be discussing. So new programs have had more scrutiny.
more
Should we
scrutiny.
say that? How about that?
Yeah.
More scrutiny. And also I was asked by your chair to weigh in on how we felt about adult education and literacy, which we only have glowing, I think, reports, feelings about, and feel very much that that is a very wise expenditure of money. So and that's not in our box, so we can afford to say that.
Yes. And
But
I
we
think
also feel it. I think.
express your
Yes,
support for
yes,
that. would
very
be
much
helpful.
so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so she wanted us to weigh in on that and that.
Yeah.
was- So anything else like the 117 that's gonna come as a surprise and get yanked out of our budget?
I do think, and this isn't meant to be an all-inclusive, like this is what they think is a great program, but I have heard several members of appropriations express support for the Vermont Serve, Learn and Earn program.
Yeah, yeah.
And
We
so-
like it too.
So
I like it a lot.
I will let you know that. And then maybe if it's helpful, I did a quick, what are the new programs, if you will, on this list?
We've done
Are
that
you
too.
all done that? Okay.
Okay,
perfect.
but you're happy, we have done that and we have met several new, some not new really, because some are, hi, David, some are evolving
Yeah.
from things we did in S11 last year.
Correct.
So
Correct.
there's something in education that we heard about, which is basically upskilling teachers. It's got a new name, but it's building on a program we invested in last year. But we're understanding is new would be what, let's see if your lines, yes, line 22,
Yep.
line 20, line 28, line 29, and line 41. Those are
Mhm.
some of the new ones that we are, and then there are a couple
Yep.
others,
Yeah.
yes.
So I think that's a helpful way to approach it. And then also, as you look at some of the dollar amounts, whether, because you have to come up with a little bit more than $2 million to meet your target. Like, so when you look at some of the appropriations levels that were set by the House, if there's a way to trim from those programs in a way that doesn't detract too much from the goal, and you might have some options there. So using the new program lens, and if there's a way to reduce maybe some of the appropriations to come up to your target.
We also, have talked about the new or the new worker program, which there is zero. And if we're going to do anything with that, that means we have to cut something more somewhere else.
And that's the discussion we're gonna have. So that is flagged. I think that's flagged for all of us here.
Yeah.
And so that's part of our discussion we're gonna have right away as soon as we have spoken to Joan. So Sarah, I think this is super helpful. Thank you very much. I sent her a plea at like 11 o'clock last night. I said, please come, because we've thought long and hard about this money and there are so many things here that we are so proud of that they're being proposed, but that we we just couldn't support when we had to look at cutting $10 million.
Can I ask just a question
Yes,
about,
yeah.
because one conversation is about the Vermont State College, and there's a couple of new programs there. And what,
Yeah.
like the 3D printing, that just sounds like an amazing program, but do they have the capacity to do it right now? It's a new program. And the other one, the restorative justice, I see a lot of value to standing up that program. But again, it's a new program. Just, how much capacity do they have to, is the appropriations committee talking about?
Well, do they, because I think the colleges said they have the capacity and we're wanting very much to do this, but I don't know, are you taking testimony on that?
They're not taking testimony on that. They're.
Right, I think we're gonna have to,
recommendation.
the college says they have the capacity.
Right, but that was before the leadership change, and
I don't think the leadership change affects that. Pat Moulton is running the workforce development. She is still in place.
okay.
And she's the one making these recommendations. And we're about to address a change in language that addresses that, but I think they have the capacity. And they're proposing that these are in many ways necessary to keep them resilient and sustainable.
And I can see that.
Yeah, the 3D,
Very exciting.
that is the future of manufacturing.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember 3 or 4 years ago, we've done a lot of work with small machine shops and custom work for the airline industry in Burlington. It's been one of the Chamber of Commerce big success, very quiet. Plattsburgh is our main competitor, and they got a 3D machine. And they can now, the competition there, we need to be able to train our folks and allow them to
I'm very supportive of the program. I just did,
Right.
if they don't have the ability to spend all that money in the next fiscal year, maybe we should put it over 2 fiscal years.
So, and I think a question Wendy and I had last night when we were chatting about this, the CHIPS money, and this is maybe a question for Joan, but if we don't get the the match, the money from the CHIPS program, and so let's say, because this 5 million is designed to match a federal program, a federal money that's coming in, correct?
Yeah, just for.
Okay, right. So if we don't get that grant, might we be able to reallocate that? Is a question for you and Sarah.
I'm sorry, to where?
Yeah,
I mean, like.
Well, to other
how would we-
economic-
How would we fulfill our obligation?
right. So if we don't get the federal piece that we're showing our obligation to here with the 5 million, I mean, is it a done deal that we have this money, that this is all we have to do is show?
We have to show commitment
Right, we're doing
for
that.
the applicants that are going to apply for CHIPS in June.
Okay,
If we don't have that commitment, it'll impact us.
we understand that.
Okay.
It's like what Matt Dunn asked us to do in the budget adjustment. We have to show commitment from the state to support a program that we're going to apply for from the feds. But
It's a little
if-
different in that,
But-
basically the applicant is applying for like more than $500 million.
got it.
If
So-
they don't have state commitment, they probably will not get it.
But that's not our question.
Ah.
Our question is, if the feds, after that application, do not fund us,
Oh, yes, it's a contingent commitment.
then we want to make contingent appropriations.
So in other words, if they don't get the grant. they-
Where can we apply that 5 million? Exactly.
Okay.
So David, that is something we're going to want to draft, which is if contingent on the federal, if the feds do not come through with that CHIPS grant, we want as a committee an ability to reallocate
Yeah.
and to something you may love. Just saying.
We just may not know for months.
Exactly.
Right.
We may not know for a while, and it may be a budget adjustment thing, but we're just flagging it. And that was a great Wendy catch, which is, oh, what if they don't fund us?
I did
Yeah,
just share
I
with.
wasn't sure of the schedule. I just didn't want it to be sitting there.
So
Well,
we
it could
get
be
that
used
they,
for something else.
yeah, we get it may not happen for a while, but we want the ability to
Yeah.
reallocate this if we have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Can we just flag that?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
flag that, and I did share, and Scott will get for the committee, a helpful email that we received from Jessica Bittner yesterday. Joan was on that provide some additional information about this $5 million. I think it'd be helpful for you to see that.
Oh, good.
So while we have all three
Yeah.
players in the room, David, that is what we would love to have you draft up. We don't necessarily want to make a specific reallocation at the moment,
Mhm.
but I think we would want, oh, is that, oh, you're not.
Well, so when David Hall, legislative council, when I put pen to paper on that, the options are that you use a waterfall mechanism, a reallocation, a contingency basis, or you don't.
Okay, so we could also, after we do our work of cutting $2.324026 million out of this.
I don't know if that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I added the
You added
117.
them, Okay.
We could specifically, given what we're gonna cut, we could specifically allocate it.
I think so. Otherwise, it just would go
Okay.
through the normal channel of BAA or some other legislative act next session. So if you
Great.
need to have it in the interim, you'll need to say.
Okay, well, that's helpful to know. That's good. So Joan, that's it. We're not cutting it. We're just saying if it doesn't get funded, this is what we would do. Oh, this is Jess's email. Okay, great, terrific. Terrific, okay. Sarah, you have given us the information we needed.
Reach out if you.
By
need anything else,
lunchtime,
we'll be
we will
working on the
hope to
budget.
have an answer. You have lifted our burden. You've lightened our load, honey, and we are very grateful.
You may have addressed this while I was fortunately out of the room, and this was on line 15, restore reversion from Act 183, Section 5. What is that?
We did discuss that, so that Sarah can re-discuss.
So last year's Act 183 workforce bill appropriated $1.2 million
Right.
to the Department of Labor for this regional workforce expansion program.
Mhm.
The House proposed to reduce that, what was originally $1.5 million appropriation. They proposed to reduce it by 1.2 million, and then they kind of reallocated those funds and used them for other purposes in the 24 budget. Senate Appropriations received information from Commissioner Harrington that said, we still need those funds, the planned purposes we still intend to do, which I think the House agrees, that at some point that funding would need to be restored. And so Senate Appropriations has identified that as a high priority to restore. And that's why on this updated sheet, you see the yellow number,
Yes.
the 1.2 million is already baked into your mix with a high priority.
Okay, so what's puzzling about that is we also heard from Commissioner Harrington,
Mhm.
and we're very frustrated that we had allocated actually 1.5 million for regional workforce expansion. Is that the same thing?
It is the same thing, and there's still $300,000 is still remaining in that program.
Oh, we have $1.4 million remaining in that program.
Yes, they haven't spent,
So correct. So
Correct.
our assumption was that they still had that.
no, the House reduced it by the 1.2 million.
So that is not reflected anywhere. And so this is restoring that guy. So we
It is.
We
yes.
were thinking they still had that. Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Well, did they how far along are they on the work?
They are moving along on it. Jay, when we have a break, I'm gonna look and see
Okay.
what Jay said. But they're moving along on it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Okay,
super
great.
helpful.
Hit me up if you need anything.
We will. We are only an email away.
That's right.
And a fire alarm, distance away, because we all evacuated to your porch,
Right, you know where we are.
which what made it
That's where I
convenient
learned
for
I
further
had to Put
conversation.
another $1 million in the ed fund.
Okay, our last, before we get to our break, which I'm in meeting, and we are going to, what?
What time is break?
As soon as we are done with Joan and David. So hopefully at about 10:45.
Right, because I gotta leave at 10:45.
Well, there we are. And how long are you, because we're gonna begin our money
I
conversation
don't,
when you return. Okay, you're not gonna be more than 15 or 20
I
minutes.
would think so. I shouldn't be.
Are you lambasting us?
Yes,
Damn,
and rightly so.
hardly. We never
You
deserve.
know, there may,
Well, I'm not
if we
gonna watch.
don't make any decisions until Randy comes back, this might be a plot.
It might, but my guess is that it has nothing to do with workforce development.
It has nothing to do with workforce development.
Correct. It has everything to do with
Okay.
other things.
So what are they plotting?
So we'll just hope you, right, anyway. So Joan and David, could we discuss we have several things we'd like to chat with you about.
Okay,
You have some specific language changes
yes,
that we would
Yeah.
like to just go through quickly
Okay.
now. Then, and then the program that you've talked about a little bit, but given that we're looking at if we need to restore money to it, because there's no money in it now, is the relocated worker program. And so we need to discuss that.
okay.
And there's something else. So those are the three pieces I have at the moment that we want to make sure you weigh in on
Okay,
while you're here.
do you want to go over the language changes or?
Let's do the easy stuff first. So David, I think we had language changes that Fred Kenny was sending you, that Joan I'm just trying to
I
think of
think
all
David
the.
already completed it, right? And we said it was good unless something else happened. after.
Okay,
So I heard the discussion from Fred yesterday. I have all that, but the two pieces that,
the Pat Moulton, the VSC change and the relocated worker program that we need to change the language no matter whether we continue to finance it or not. So could we talk about those two?
We need to change the language even if we don't fund it.
Well, because,
Well, I mean, that's debatable.
Okay.
Because basically we'll be overspent anyway. So if we don't fund it, it's game over. If we continue to fund it, we want to make clear that it should be.
oh, this is the discussion.
Yeah,
of what you're.
right.
So
So
why
you
don't you just go ahead?
okay. So Joan Goldstein, Department of Economic Development Commissioner. The language as it stood before David made the changes was that anybody who moved here after July 1st, 2021 was eligible. So the problem with that is that people who already moved here would be funding them. We wanted to make this more of an incentive. This was both critique of the state auditor's office, but also the independent contractor that did the study. And it basically was that if you really want this, if you want to see whether this plays a role, you should kind of pre-approve people before they move here, and then once they move here, then you pay them. And it also does away with the issue where people move here and they think they're gonna get money, and then we run out of money because there's such demand. It leaves a really bad taste in everybody's mouth, and it creates a lot of stir. So we crossed out the date, but we also wanted to add a sentence, which David, I think, did.
It's right
up
above
there,
your head.
okay. Right, which basically says they actually apply before becoming a resident of the state, so that we pre-commit and then we give them I think we give them 9 months then to relocate. Once they relocate, they prove residency, then we can repay them the reimbursement expenses. That's the way ideally we'd like the program to run.
Okay. And, okay, so that's a language change. Are you going to chat with us about the proposal that I heard about this morning from Tori that would also be a language change that would involve marketing specifically to, marketing this program specifically to the BIPOC community, and which is, a little challenging given that we know that our chair has written an op-ed piece about how hard it is to retain people who move here in many ways from those communities. So are you seeking a language change on that at this point?
I'm not familiar with
Okay.
what the
Okay,
request
it was Tori came.
Okay,
So then let's not discuss that now.
Okay.
Your second language changes in section 8. Well, it's not, this is still in the bill. This is the bill
yeah.
section 35.
Yeah, and just by crossing out state and locally owned business, then we do away with the issue that Vermont State Colleges had, but also there are many municipalities who, well, not many, but we know of instances where there's a water board that isn't necessarily the municipality.
Right.
So that led to some confusion.
Right, with
Plus
some
it just kind of contradicts, there's another part of this, of the program that allows a municipality to apply. So it just feels awkward. And this was a holdover from the original capital investment program that we did 2 sessions ago.
So our intent had been to make, Randy will remember, but our intent had been to make this available, these community recovery and revitalization program monies, the evolution of our capital investment program, which I love so dearly, to make it available as broadly as possible, to nonprofits, to for-profits, and to municipalities. And it ended up during the process getting further focused, which was too bad. The challenge here with A, and the reason to exclude that, is a request from Pat Moulton on workforce development at the state colleges at soon to be Vermont State University. And they found that they could not apply for some of the programs we're talking about here. Some of their workforce development programs, they were not eligible to apply for any investment from the community program, which is accessing ARPA money.
So they couldn't get money to buy a 3D printer?
Correct. Well, it wasn't just that. It was, I think it's the ag program in particular. Their big ag program. They, I understand that is really was the barrier that, and they had applied and then found out they weren't eligible.
Right. And we had wanted a technical correction on this anyway because of this whole water situation.
Right. So thank you. I think those are, well, I think those are good changes, and we want, I mean, it's an instrument, we hadn't fully understood that would cut out our state colleges.
What is the logger situation?
Water, no.
Water.
Water, it's the water. Water, it's water and sewer, which is what we're pushing pretty hard in another
I mean,
bill.
most times it's a municipal, entity, but there are some cases where it's a private water.
And which of course, when you have a,
Quite a few.
So they wouldn't really be eligible to apply if we kept this language, so,
okay,
all right.
so thank you. How is the committee on those language changes? I'm fine.
Yeah, not the relocated worker. You're not asking about that yet, right?
Well, we're asking for that language change even for the current program. If we, I mean.
We changed the language. We have to decide if we're gonna fund it.
Okay.
We have to
Then
fund it or not.
Some of this
I'm
may
good.
not be as wedded as some others.
Agreed.
This is what our discussion is going to be about. So to that
Committee
end,
has had for the relocated worker program, has had, I think, benefit of seeing the documents that your department produced on the return on investment. Have you seen those?
No.
No,
This is going way back. It was just sort
Even
of,
if you
You have a new
give it the
report.
time, yeah, you have a new report, that's great.
isn't
but
it on our
not-
website?
yeah,
Yeah. The
Yeah,
old
back
one
from-
should be shared.
Oh, yeah, I'd very much like to
Because
see that.
what we rarely see in government is a program that actually makes money rather than loses it. We hardly ever see that.
I thought Benji.
So I think, Scott, because I think we should chat about this while Joan is here.
Yeah.
If we could pull up your latest report, which I believe is
Yeah.
on our website.
or on our website, there's a report, not just our report, but also the third party's report. I could send stuff.
Let's-
Let me find it.
If we have it on our website, if we could pull it. Great, and can we pull it up on the screen? Is that possible? Because I think it would be helpful for, and for us as we look at this. This is a program we established in 18 or 19.
It was established in 2018 and 2019 was our first year.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so it's not a new program, it's evolved, and people have very strong feelings about it, but,
Oh, it started first as a remote worker program.
right, and then it evolved.
Mhm.
So, and this is a program that has brought new people, they are still here, most of them, I think,
Do we know if they're still here?
yeah.
They did a study, yeah,
Even
as
just for
part of that
tax, we can
third-party
know.
study, they looked at the first, I believe it was the first 2 years, whether they were still here, and it looked like a large percentage was, but I don't have.
So,
that information in mind.
Are you trying to find it
I'm
on your
trying
website?
to find our, there are 2 reports.
So, Randy, while Joan's looking and Scott's looking, you want to just give Wendy and Ann some of how you feel about this and why we feel
Some of
strongly
the
about it?
statistics that we saw, these are early on that the department produced, before the third party. What we saw, among other things, was that we may have spent an average of somewhere around $3,300 to $3,800 per person. There was a higher limit, but they were asking for less. And then we looked at the earnings that those folks had that they would not have had. This is particularly for the remote worker program, people working elsewhere, but then working in effect at home in Vermont. And what we found was that the amount of money that they contributed to our economy, particularly in terms of taxes collected by all forms of taxes, far outweighed the amount of money that we spent to get them. In many cases, particularly those who earned in the $100,000 range, their actual payback to us was well under a year before we got back in tax revenue the amount of money that we paid out to get them. Now, the new study was designed to focus on some of the criticisms that, one, we paid people who were already here, as opposed to what this process does in the proposal is to make sure they haven't moved here yet, and to incentive. And the second, it looked at are they in fact staying? So are we in effect pay money for people who then turn around and leave quickly? And that doesn't seem to be the case based on the stats we have right now. So those were the real issues. And it was the thing that struck me as much as anything else is it was a real return on investment. We were actually getting money that we would not have gotten otherwise.
And then the surveys that we do, typically the people who move are earning more income, are younger, and tend to locate in some of the more rural areas of the
Yeah,
state.
that was
So
kind of a surprise.
that was
too.
a surprise as well. I think the average age was in the 30s. And they do bring people with them. They bring children, they bring partners. So it.
Okay, behind you, we have the annual reports. Let's see if we can pull up the.
There's an analysis, the first one is the analysis that I think the third party did, further up the page, Scott, and then.
No, further back up,
Yeah,
other direction.
this one, read the full report.
Okay, if we could,
That's the DFR report, and I think they also did an R.
and what's the date of this?
Report. It's, it's further up the original page on.
It's further up.
Yeah, this is our report. There's a report on the first link, on the link that I sent you.
You're.
That shows the outside, the outside report with the independent contractor DFR had contracted with to show.
Right, which is what we hired Wendy in
Yeah.
because of some of these criticisms.
Right. This one, the economic analysis.
Whoop. There it is. So okay, and then this is from this is when Michael did this, and this was in 21. This is after only 3 years of the
Yeah,
program.
they did 2
Or
years.
2
of
years.
Studies, yeah.
Okay, and maybe what would be best,
It's a lengthy report, but at the end of it, I believe is where they have the ROI.
the what?
Return on investment.
Oh, the return on investment. Okay, Scott's going to the very end here. Is that it? Some of this?
And those are just like the occupations that some of the people fill. I mean, the year that they did this is the year that we tried to be targeted, and then the targeting kind of was a backfire. That was another critique that they had, that we targeted certain occupations as per the Department of Labor, and it turns out, well, we need a lot more people than what is indicated in those reports. So,
But on the whole,
on the whole, it was positive. I mean, they basically said, look, if you really want to see, does this make a difference? The small amounts of money that had previously been committed to it, it's really difficult to.
here's the return on investment, which is pretty small, but
Yeah.
for the amount we've spent, we have, as we were hoping, significant sums in tax returns, right? Isn't that?
527,000 state tax revenue. Total program cost of 670. 18 effectively cost the state 140, turning 78% of its direct costs of new tax generation at the state level in year one.
And the objective, of course, is now, if they're here, that's every year that
Yeah,
that
it's-
would be,
It's recurring revenue without additional future.
without additional costs.
But what we also saw, I know in statistics the department produced.
Yeah,
As we looked at jobs stratified by the income that the individual was at, who was coming, it's the higher income people that produce a much greater return on investment in year one, in some cases far exceeding what we put out.
I think it was like 8 to 1. It was it was
Very
a
low.
huge number for if people were making 100,000, and then obviously if it was 50,000, we did it for like 50.
If we
7,500.
bring in low-level workers and low-income workers, that takes a longer time to get any money.
Right.
So, I mean, one of the biggest arguments for it is, A, we still have 10,000 unfilled jobs. The other piece,
Just 10,000?
I think there's,
I thought it was higher. I mean, the
I thought
last
it
I
was-
saw it was like 20,000, but I
That's what
haven't
thought.
talked to Matt Barrow.
Those are the numbers that I heard. were
But
in
yeah,
excess
it
of
was-
20.
There's a lot of unfilled jobs. And
Those are mostly low-paying jobs, though.
no,
Not
no, it's a whole
necessarily.
range.
I think,
National
yeah,
Life has 43.
Open recs.
Yeah, I
oh,
don't.
they have low-paying, I mean,
Yeah.
You just look at the
Not
number of
too many.
nurses and
Yeah, there's a lot of high paying
They're,
CDL drivers,
yeah, they're,
or
These are not-
mid-level
it's
jobs,
jobs.
but
or
I'm,
mid-level.
but they're not the high-income people that you're talking about
well,
in this.
Well, unless you consider, say, the VP of operations of UPN.
or
No,
or the
but there aren't
president.
that many of
But
the.
or now the
I
president of
mean-
Vermont State College. There's some high-paying
Right.
jobs
There
that
are
are
some.
unfilled.
Yes, there are some, definitely.
And the mid-range jobs, again, when you look at the fact that overall, we're getting a return on investment that looks like, at least the overall, the payback is in year two. And at the front end of it.
Yeah, well, you begin to pay back at a revenue income, at a revenue generation of over $500,000 a year. You know, every year, that's every year, as long as they stay.
Well, I guess the question is, for $3,000, would a person making $100,000 not move here? You know, I mean, and that's what we need for that income level to really pay it back. On the other hand, we are doing other things to recruit BIPOC, you know, low people that frequently have lower paying jobs to come to the state. You just want to make sure you get a
What I've
balance.
seen in the past, you know, in the job that I've had in the
Yeah.
private sector, where you look at recruiting people or making deals like that, it is a sum of things that you do. It often isn't the one thing,
Right.
but it's the thing that, you know, is the straw that
Right.
breaks the back that moves it along. And it's hardly ever one single thing. Yes, $3,800 is not gonna necessarily make a person at that level move, but it sends a message. It
It's a
sends a
contributing
message that is
factor.
helpful
Yeah.
and that we want you.
Yeah,
That's probably the most important message of all, that we really want you and we're putting our money where our mouth is.
Now we could just find them a house.
right.
Working on that.
Okay, we're working on that too. So, the latest numbers that you have for how many we brought in, because that report is on our website.
Yeah, and that report, we talked about last
That's an
time.
ACCD report.
Yeah, and we have.
And then we're gonna take a break after
There's been an
this. 'Cause I think we're-
accumulated,
Sorry. No, we're,
So that report is on our website, right? Is that what we
I
determined?
believe it.
from the last time that we came, I'm just, we could send it. We-
All
we
right,
could- we could
I
send
was
it
just
to you.
trying to look at it myself.
our
It's hard, if you don't know the date,
Yeah,
then
It's
it's
in the
really
witness.
hard to find something on the
Yeah,
website.
It's in the witnesses under Joan.
I'll find it, put it
Oh, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
he's gonna find it
The
and
one
put it
that
in
came out
today's.
January of 23, and then we had up-to-date numbers that I forwarded to you from the last time I was here.
Right, thank you.
Because even since that date, there've been
So
a
do we,
number of
can you
applications.
give us just up-to-date numbers now?
Yeah, Oh, so these numbers I have are just for this year. I don't have the cumulative.
Okay.
I'd have to add those to the current report, so I could do that. I think we had in total 1,200 Vermonters that had moved here with, when you think about all their families, and then from that date,
That it's 1,200 people,
people,
not the specific
people, not the
individuals.
Their
specific
families.
grantees, but it's the family. And then I just got another up-to-date, an additional 500. I think it's 500.
From this year.
Yeah,
So we're looking at 1,700 people, new Vermonters.
yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna jump, Scott is kindly bringing the report to the fore, but that'll be, those figures will be behind we won't have the 1,700 in that report. So the individuals are more like 400.
The individuals, well, right now, there are 360 applications in queue. 229 people already moved here, 223 of them completed their survey, and those workers report they've brought an additional 367 family members with them. So far with the program that we've done this year, it's 596 new Vermonters. So we add that on to
How many?
596 new Vermonters so far with this.
That's just
program
this year.
This year, yeah.
When you say this year, is that
This year is this fiscal year.
Fiscal year
And you, so you
23,
have money to pay those?
Yes, we have money
right?
to pay those. Those are the ones that
Yeah,
we've paid
but they're
already.
running out.
But we are running out, like we've got program opened in November with 3 million, and we've processed 687 unique applications. We've approved 326. We've spent 2.1 million, so we have like 900,000 remaining. But we've got applications in queue that would count for 2.3 million. So there's definitely more demand than we have money for.
Okay, when they apply and they're out of state, and we change the rules, do we know where they're locating, and are they buying, are they renting?
Yeah, it's a variety. We end up knowing, we don't know if they, put it this way, we reimburse moving expenses. Some people
Right.
show a closing statement.
Okay.
So some
that's-
are buying, some show a lease, as a way to prove residency. And then, and on the one, so this year, what we did is we did both. We did people who had already moved here and people who were out of state, because the way, the ambiguity of the language. The people who are not here, we're over committing, like we're saying, because we don't know what their expenses would be, so we don't know where they're moving to. So we're giving them the maximum commitment, which is 7,500. We're not going to know the actual until they move here and they submit their invoices. So it could be less, and we could have
It's just
residual.
accounting.
Yeah,
And they know that you're giving them the 75?
they know that they're pre-approved, which means that when they move here, that money is sent for them. But they will only get money if they submit invoices for relocation expenses. So it's.
So that's
still-
things like, is it moving
It's
expenses?
usually moving
or is it
expenses.
Computers?
No.
I thought originally.
connection.
Originally it was
And
more,
sometimes paying for the
Wi-Fi.
connection of the computer
Yeah.
to
but we
the house.
limited that, I think, 2 years
Yeah,
ago to
broadband.
just.
So now it's moving
Just
expenses?
moving.
My niece moved here in Grantham Village. Somehow they got Wi-Fi to the house to work remotely.
Where, which town?
Grantham,
Oh.
south of Warren.
Oh, okay.
They're literally overhanging the gorge in an old farmhouse. I couldn't get cell service down there, but they got
Wow.
it hardwired in, and both she and her husband worked, and their kids went to school in Boston.
So they paid for that?
Yes. I
So-
don't know if she knew about this.
This is Joan's latest
They
email.
are staying now. The kids are in school in Warren.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Anything else you want to add on this?
What are the major like worries about it?
I think we're in pretty, I think we're ready
What do you
for
have to
our,
put?
I think we've heard from, I think we've heard enough to be able to take a bit of a break. I just want to chat with David about language changes. And then we'll reconvene at 11 to just talk about what we're going to do about the money that we need to cut from this.
You're making your final decision
Yeah.
today.
So, but the plus is we were given, we have, no,
You have some money.
we
we
have
We don't
less
have
to
as
cut.
much to cut.
We have
Ah.
substantially less. to
But
cut.
you're gonna make, if we fund you,
Yeah, if we do,
then
that's the big discussion is whether we
still gotta-
add,
we gotta cut more.
Do we have
yes.
any,
We were down to.
Yeah.
2
can I
million.
just talk about just why my concerns about this? program?
Yes, absolutely.
Just-
This is the time,
it's-
you've got the expert here.
Spending money on this type of program, rather, I see it
May I go to
as
the loo while you talk?
getting.
I've
what?
heard your concerns. Can I go to the loo?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Great.
Are we still in session if you're
Yes,
gone?
we're still at,
No, we're,
oh,
But that's
are
all right.
we
we
recessed?
are,
We
Okay.
don't have a quorum, so we're
But
out.
I just want to.
you can, we can
But I
still be
can-
live
okay.
in a community discussion. I'll be right back.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
I,
are we, am I gonna lose break?
No,
oh yeah, I want to break too.
yeah, we're gonna go on break as soon as you're done, but you two
I
have
guess-
the biggest concerns
okay,
here.
I
You have the
see-
expert.
No,
We have a
understand
limited
it.
amount of resources,
Right.
obviously, right, as a state, and we have people here already, some born here, some having, come in, a lot of folks come here by their spouses, being,
Right.
who are from Vermont, went
Trailer-
elsewhere.
What do we call the
Well, a
trailer
trailing spouse, but like the way I got here was because, I met my husband in Philadelphia. He's from Vermont. We tried to move back many times. We finally were able to make it
Right.
happen, right? So I love it here. It's wonderful. I never would have thought of coming to Vermont if I hadn't married a Vermonter, right?
Right.
It's tiny, but the quality of life is amazing. And I tell people who I know from other places all the time, what a wonderful place this is to live. We have a limited amount of funding. We have very few residents to handle the overall tax burden. So I'm very conscious about spending money when, to me, it's not the best use of that money. And for economic development, we have a lot of untapped potential of people. We have people who are undereducated. We have people who are not in the workforce. And I hope we have numbers on that.
Yeah, I think the last we heard from Matt Bear was that even if you put all the unemployed people back to work, we still wouldn't be able to fill the jobs.
Okay, but we have people
Even the,
here.
amount of graduates.
We have people here who are not meeting their potential and who we may be supporting in other ways.
Right.
So I see a higher value to educating the folks who are here, to the forgivable loans for education. I think that's a much higher return on investment. And
Can't
we
you
don't
both?
have, I don't know. It doesn't
I
seem like
I don't
it.
think
If we fund you, we've now got to give you 4 million, I think. We will have to cut over 6 million off this list, and I think that's where the balancing act comes in.
Right. And I just see education of particularly the existing people, if people are welcome to move here to participate in that. I see that as a much higher return on investment,
So you don't look at
especially
it,
government money.
you don't look at it as like new taxpayers are coming into this.
I think a lot of them will come anyway. And that it's a fun thing. And I'm glad we got the advertisement and the press when it was first initiated.
Right, yeah,
But-
and it's still garnished press, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it's
Somebody
it's
just
a
sent me something.
clever, fun
It
thing.
was on Zillow that we pay people to come here. We want
Yeah,
9
and why do we have to pay
So,
people to come here? It's a great place
We're
to
going
live.
to adjourn.
Okay,
because
so
we're-
anyway, I just wanted you
No,
to
no,
know